Imagine completing exactly 84 consecutive passes in the first 5 minutes of a match, like just completely dominating from the opening whistle.
Yeah, that's not something you see every day, especially at a World Cup.
Right, exactly. And imagine scoring this flawless, sweeping goal before the opposition has even, tied their laces. You hold on to 75% possession for an entire half of football.
Sounds like a total masterclass.
It does. But then somehow you end up getting completely outshot and outworked by a team that just spent the last 3 weeks locked in a strict Ebola quarantine.
I mean, it's just wild. It is the kind of statistical and narrative anomaly that makes you question everything you thought you knew about the sport.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking a magnifying glass to the frankly shocking 1-1 draw between Portugal and the Democratic Republic of Congo at the 2026 World Cup down in Houston.
And there's a lot to get through here.
There really is. We've got a massive stack of post-match analysis, tracking data, tactical breakdowns, and some very heated pundit reactions to sift through today. And our mission is to figure out exactly how a script that started so perfectly managed to unravel so completely.
Because the narratives colliding in this single match are just phenomenal. You have this historic, odds-defying triumph for an underdog nation crashing head-on into a favored team that, honestly, looks like it's suffocating under the immense weight of its own legacy.
Today we're going to explore 3 core themes. First, we'll look at that historic turnaround by DR Congo. Second, we have to wade into the intense and frankly uncomfortable tactical debate surrounding Cristiano Ronaldo's performance.
Oh yeah, the elephant on the pitch.
Exactly. And finally, we will try to decode Portugal manager Roberto Martinez's highly unusual, head-scratching post-match comments. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to really understand the shock of this result, we have to start with that opening sequence you mentioned. Because saying Portugal had a good start, it doesn't capture the sheer spatial dominance they showed.
Right, it felt like Portugal had the ball on a string right out of the gate. Just how dominant were those opening minutes? Like, what do the tracking numbers actually look like?
The data is staggering. In the first 5 minutes and 32 seconds of the match, Portugal completed exactly 84 passes. That is the highest number of consecutive passes from a kickoff ever recorded at a World Cup.
Wow.
Yeah, the DR Congo players were essentially just chasing shadows. They couldn't get a single cleat on the ball. And it wasn't just, sterile possession. It was very purposeful.
Right, it led directly to the goal.
Exactly. It culminated in this beautiful sweeping move, a picture-perfect cross from Pedro Neto, met by a towering header from João Neves in the 6th minute.
It felt like watching a heavyweight boxer land a flawless knockout combination in the first 10 seconds of round 1. You land that hit, the opponent stumbles, and you immediately assume the fight is over. You're already, thinking about the post-fight press conference.
And if you look closely at that goal, there is a really fascinating detail that perfectly illustrates the unique makeup of this Portuguese squad. João Neves, the young midfielder who scored that brilliant header, wasn't even born when Cristiano Ronaldo played his first major international tournament.
Wait, really? Euro 2004?
Yeah, Euro 2004, Neves wasn't even born yet.
That timeline is just, it's wild to think about.
It really is. You have a squad blending the absolute cutting edge of young, dynamic European talent with the most enduring veteran presence in the history of the sport. And in that 6th minute, it looked like the perfect marriage of youth and experience.
But then, the heavyweight boxer realizes the underdog isn't staying down. DR Congo just shook it off. And to really grasp the magnitude of them shaking off that early punch, we need to talk about their backstory. Because they didn't just wander onto this pitch by accident.
No, absolutely not.
What kind of historical baggage was this team carrying into Houston?
It's heavy baggage. DR Congo arrived at this tournament ranked 46th in the world. But more importantly, this is their first World Cup appearance in 52 years.
Half a century.
Yeah. Their last appearance was in 1974, playing under the name Zaire. And it remains one of the most infamous runs in football history. They conceded 14 goals in 3 matches and didn't score a single one.
Oh, wow. That's rough.
It was a disaster that hovered like a dark cloud over the nation's footballing identity for 50 years.
And even getting to this 2026 tournament was a logistical nightmare for them, right? The preparation wasn't exactly a luxury training camp.
Far from it. This current squad had an incredibly stressful, anxiety-inducing buildup. Due to an Ebola outbreak back home, the entire team had to spend 3 weeks in a strict, mandatory quarantine.
3 whole weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks locked in a hotel in Belgium before they were even legally allowed to travel to the United States.
So think about that psychology. You have a team carrying half a century of historical embarrassment, dealing with the mental toll of a grueling 3-week medical quarantine, stepping onto the pitch against a heavily favored European giant. And they immediately go down 1-0 after not touching the ball for almost 6 minutes.
It's a recipe for a total collapse.
Right. Most teams would absolutely fold. The floodgates would open. How did they actually survive that?
They survived through brilliant, stubborn spatial geometry. Manager Sebastian de Sabre set them up in a very disciplined 5-3-2 formation.
Okay, break that down for us real quick.
So for those trying to visualize that, it essentially puts a solid wall of 5 defenders horizontally across the penalty box with a net of 3 midfielders hovering right in front of them. It completely chokes off the middle of the pitch.
So they just turtle up, basically.
Exactly. They didn't panic. They didn't break rank to chase the ball. They just let Portugal pass it around the outside of that block.
And as the first half wore on, you could see the bunker mentality they probably built up in that Belgian hotel starting to translate onto the pitch. They grew in belief. Their veteran forward, Cedric Bakambu, started finding little pockets of space on the counterattack.
Yeah, and Johan Wissa started threatening the back line. Which brings us to the 5th minute of first half stoppage time, the 45 plus 5-minute mark. DR Congo earns a corner kick.
Right.
They play it short. The ball finds Arthur Masuaku, who floats this incredibly brave, curling cross into the penalty area.
And there is Johan Wissa, completely unmarked, powering a header right past Portuguese goalkeeper Diogo Costa. I mean, the stadium in Houston just erupted.
It was incredible to watch.
The pockets of expat fans were in absolute tears. It was pure, unadulterated joy, the first ever World Cup goal for the nation.
It's a monumental moment in sports history.
Yeah.
But from a tactical standpoint, that goal completely scrambled Portugal's internal circuits. And this is where the match data gets really interesting.
This is exactly what I wanted to ask you about, because the halftime stats look like a typo. Portugal had 75% possession. They completed a record 490 passes in one half. But after that 6th-minute goal, their expected goals was a microscopic .07.
It's unbelievable.
And just for the listener, expected goals, or XG, is just a metric measuring the actual quality and likelihood of scoring from the chances you create. So if they had the ball the entire time, why did their attack completely stall out?
That is the defining question of the match. And if you have 75% possession but your attack completely stalls out, you have to look at the focal point of that attack.
Right.
When a team creates 0 high-quality chances with that much of the ball, it means their possession is sterile. They are creating what analysts call the horseshoe of sadness.
The horseshoe of sadness.
Yeah, it's a great term. They pass the ball in a U-shape around the perimeter of the defense, padding their stats, but they lack the physical penetration to actually stretch the defenders out of position.
And that brings us to the uncomfortable reality of our second theme. We have to talk about the elephant on the pitch, the Cristiano Ronaldo dilemma, because let's look at the final match stats. DR Congo didn't just hold on for a draw, they actually outplayed Portugal in the final third.
They really did. Bakambu even hit the post in the second half. DR Congo finished the game with more shots, 8 to Portugal's 7. And they had a higher overall expected goals total for the match, .82 compared to Portugal's .69.
Wow.
The quarantined underdogs literally generated better chances to win the football game than the European Masters.
And when you look at Ronaldo's specific output, the contrast between his historical legacy and his current reality is stark. Just by stepping onto the pitch, he made history. At 41 years old, he became the oldest outfield player to ever start a World Cup match.
An incredible achievement on its own.
Absolutely. He tied Paolo Maldini with 23 appearances, but what was his actual physical contribution to the game?
What's fascinating here is how the data perfectly captures a player fading in real time. 0 chances created for his teammates. 0 shots on target from 3 very poor attempts.
Ouch.
And maybe the most damning statistic for a striker playing a full 90 minutes for a team with 75% possession, he had a joint lowest 25 touches of the football. He was essentially a ghost. I mean, he hasn't scored a goal in his last 10 major tournament games.
And the global punditry did not hold back at all. Former AC Milan player Kevin Prince Boateng was on television essentially saying Ronaldo needs to fall on his sword. He argued that the entire Portuguese team plays with too much anxiety because they feel this overwhelming obligation to feed him the ball.
It's the gravitational pull of a superstar. When you have a player of that magnitude, the tactical system naturally orbits around them. But what happens when the star at the center of the solar system can no longer carry the weight of that orbit?
It collapses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thierry Henry offered a masterclass in tactical breakdown on Fox Soccer that went viral, and he explained exactly how this is hurting Portugal.
Break that down for us, because Henry's analysis was ruthless. He explicitly said, the team needs to score, not you. How exactly is Ronaldo getting in the way of his own teammates?
It comes down to spatial geometry again. Henry highlighted a specific play where Bruno Fernandes, Portugal's brilliant playmaker, had the ball and was looking for a passing lane.
Okay.
Normally, a modern striker would make a darting sprint away from the ball, running behind the defensive line. This forces the defenders to chase them, which stretches the defense and creates a massive hole in the midfield for Bruno to operate in.
Right. You pull the defense backward to create space forward.
Exactly. But at 41, Ronaldo no longer has that explosive burst of speed to threaten the space behind the defense. So instead, he checks to the ball. He runs toward Bruno Fernandes, desperate to get a touch.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But by doing so, he drags two giant center backs directly into Bruno's airspace. He actively suffocates his own playmaker, bringing the defenders with him and ruining the passing lane. He creates a massive tactical bottleneck.
Okay, wait, let me push back here for a second. Are we blaming the player, or are we blaming the system? To me, this feels like an engineering problem.
How so?
It feels like Portugal is trying to run a brand new, lightning-fast operating system with incredibly dynamic young players like Rafael Leão and Vitinha, but they are forcing it to run on a 20-year-old legacy hard drive. Is Ronaldo physically holding them back, or is the team's psychological need to serve him the real issue?
That's a fair point.
Because if he's just standing there dragging defenders, why can't these world-class midfielders just ignore him and play around him?
That is a phenomenal question, and it strikes right at the heart of team psychology. It is incredibly difficult to just play around a living legend. You have to remember, these young players grew up with Ronaldo posters on their bedroom walls.
That's true. Neves wasn't even born when he started.
Right. So subconsciously, when you are in the final third and you see your childhood idol aggressively calling for the ball, the instinct to defer to him is just overpowering. The system isn't just a tactical diagram on a whiteboard, it's a living emotional ecosystem. And right now, the emotional need to validate their captain is completely overriding their tactical efficiency.
So if the team is emotionally paralyzed on the pitch, that responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the manager to fix, right? Which transitions us to the sidelines. How does the leadership handle a crisis of identity this profound?
It's not easy.
Because manager Roberto Martinez's post-match press conference was genuinely bizarre.
It was a fascinating case study in crisis communication. Usually when a top-tier manager draws against an underdog, they come out with standard PR speak. They talk about learning lessons or needing to be sharper in the final third.
But Martinez didn't do that at all. He gets to the podium and says, and I quote, "We don't need to win the World Cup."
Yeah, that was a jaw-dropper.
He elaborated, saying, "We need to perform well and execute what is required of us, and we don't want to carry the burden of winning the World Cup on our shoulders." So what does this all mean? If you're a Portugal fan who just watched your team drop points to the 46th ranked team in the world, hearing your manager say, "We don't need to win," has to set off alarm bells.
It's an incredibly high-wire act. You can interpret this in two very different ways. On one hand, it could be a sign of lowered ambitions, which is terrifying for a favored nation. But on the other hand, Martinez might be diagnosing the exact psychological paralysis we just discussed.
Like trying to take the heat off.
Exactly. He sees a team playing tight, suffocated by the pressure of delivering a fairy tale ending for their aging icon.
Well, wait, let me play devil's advocate again. Isn't that exactly what a top sports psychologist would tell a team that is suffocating under immense external pressure? You tell them to focus on the process, not the outcome. You shrink the world down to the next pass, the next tackle, and you remove the massive burden of the trophy.
That is a very valid read. And if that was his strategy, it's a clever psychological ploy. But here's where that theory falls apart completely. It contradicts the mentality of his captain.
Oh, right, the Instagram post.
Yes. Cristiano Ronaldo immediately went on Instagram after the game and posted, "Not the start we wanted, but this is far from over. Head up and focus on the next game." Ronaldo's entire brand, his entire psychological makeup, is built on an absolute obsession with winning. He doesn't do relieving pressure, he demands it.
And you can actually see that tension between the manager's words and the tactical reality in the substitutions Martinez made. If Martinez really wanted to relieve pressure and execute a fluid system, he would have made different choices when they desperately needed a goal late in the game.
Exactly. And this is the smoking gun. As the clock ticked down and the attack remained totally sterile, Martinez left the 41-year-old Ronaldo on the pitch for the full 90 minutes. And who did he take off to shake things up?
The playmakers?
Right. He subbed off his most vibrant, creative playmakers. Bernardo Silva was pulled at halftime. Coutinho was subbed off late. He removed the software and kept the legacy hardware running.
And when the press pressed him on that exact contradiction, like why he kept Ronaldo on while removing his creative engines, Martinez flatly defended the choice. He said, when we're looking for a goal, Cristiano has to be on the field.
Which is an incredibly revealing admission. It shows that despite the lack of touches, despite the 0 shots on target, Martinez still views Ronaldo as the ultimate trump card. He is betting on the historical aura of the player over the current glaring tactical reality.
He's just hoping for magic.
Pretty much. As a manager, he is terrified of the one moment the ball happens to fall in the penalty box and Ronaldo isn't there to strike it.
But the tracking data, the XG, the eye test, it's all screaming that the aura simply isn't enough anymore. It paints a picture of a Portuguese camp that is incredibly heavy and burdened, and the contrast between that suffocating atmosphere and the post-match reaction from DR Congo is just night and day.
Oh, entirely. The pure relief and joy from DR Congo's manager, Sebastian de Sabre, was the polar opposite of Martinez's complex psychological games. De Sabre wasn't talking about burdens or expectations. He just spoke about immense pride.
He really did.
He said, "We showed courage and resilience. Scoring our first goal is a huge source of pride because it reflects the character of this team. The entire country deserves it."
He also threw in this great line. He said, "There was not enough blue in the stands, but our players are tough." It's such a pure distillation of why we watch sports. You have DR Congo, a team that survived an Ebola quarantine and 52 years of sporting trauma, playing with absolute unburdened joy.
It's an amazing story.
And then you have Portugal, a squad of elite millionaires playing like they have a piano strapped to their backs because they're so terrified of ruining a legend's final chapter. You know, as we look at this dynamic, it's impossible not to connect it to our own lives. Think about your own workplace, your own business, or even personal projects.
Oh, absolutely.
How often do we fall victim to the exact same sunk cost fallacy? We stubbornly stick to a piece of legacy software that cost a fortune 10 years ago, or we rely entirely on a senior team member who used to be our top performer, purely because of past glory.
It's a universal human flaw. We cling to the things that made us successful in the past. The hardest thing to do in leadership, whether you're managing a World Cup team or a corporate department, is recognizing when a paradigm has fundamentally shifted.
Yeah, that takes a lot.
It requires immense courage to adapt to new data, especially when that adaptation means sidelining an icon or abandoning a beloved strategy. Martinez is facing that ultimate leadership test right now. Does he adapt to the data or does he double down on the legend?
And he has to decide quickly because with group stage games coming up against Uzbekistan and Colombia, the margin for error is officially gone. The safety net has been entirely removed.
There's no more room for sterile possession. They have to find penetration or they are going home early.
To wrap up today's dive, we are truly looking at a tale of two deeply contrasting realities sharing the exact same pitch in Houston. On one side, you have DR Congo, Yorin Wissa cementing his name in history, earning his nation's first ever World Cup point and goal. It was a joyful, unburdened triumph of the human spirit over incredible logistical nightmares and historical ghosts.
And on the other side, you have Portugal, a team boasting arguably the finest technical talent on the planet, yet totally bogged down and bottlenecked by the heavy, almost paralyzing weight of managing a legend's twilight years.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We started this whole conversation by imagining a flawless start on the biggest stage that suddenly unravels, but it leaves you with a lingering question, one that applies long after the final whistle blows. When you are building a team, whether that's on a sports field, in the boardroom, or managing your own life, at what point does your unyielding loyalty to your greatest past asset become the very thing preventing your future success? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.